Now read this.
Hello, and welcome back to Now Read This, The Black Cauldron, Book 2 in the Chronicles of Prydain, Chapter 11, The Cottage. Taran spun around and raised his sword. Suddenly in his hand writhed a cold serpent, hissing and twisting to strike. With a cry of horror he flung it away. The serpent fell to the ground, and there, in its place, lay Taran's blade. Eilonwy stifled a scream. Taran drew back fearfully. Facing him was a short and rather plump little woman with a round, lumpy face and a pair of very sharp black eyes. Her hair hung like a clump of discoloured marsh weeds, bound with vines and ornamented with bejewelled pins that seemed about to lose themselves in the hopeless tangle. She wore a dark, shapeless, ungirt robe covered with patches and stains. Her feet were bare and exceptionally large. The companions drew closer together, Gurgi trembling violently, crouched behind Taran, the bard looking pale and uneasy, nevertheless prepared to stand his ground. "Come along, my ducklings," the Enchantress said cheerily. "I promise it won't hurt a bit. You can bring your sword if you want," she added with an indulgent smile at Taran, "though you won't need it. I've never seen a toad with a sword. On the other hand, I've never seen a sword with a toad, so you're welcome to do as you please." "We please to stay as we are," cried Eilonwy. "Don't think we're going to let anybody—" "Who are you?" Taran cried. "We have done you no harm. You have no cause to threaten us." "How many twigs in a bird's nest?" asked the Enchantress suddenly. "Answer quickly. There, you see," she added. "Poor chicks, you don't even know that. How could you be expected to know what you really want out of life?" "One thing I want," retorted Eilonwy, "is not to be a toad." "You're a pretty little duck," said the Enchantress in a kind, cajoling voice. "Would you give me your hair once you've done with it? I have such trouble with mine these days. Do you ever have the feeling things are disappearing into it and you might never see them again? No matter," she went on. "You'll enjoy being toads, skipping about here and there, sitting on toadstools. Well, perhaps not that. Toads don't really sit on toadstools, but you might dance in a dew circle. Now there's a charming thought. Don't be frightened," she added, leaning over and whispering in Taran's ear. "You can't imagine for a moment I'd do all I said. Goodness no, I wouldn't dream of stepping on you. I couldn't stand the squashiness." With mounting terror, Taran cast desperately about in his mind for some means of saving his companions. He would have considered this dishevelled creature's intentions as mad and impossible had he not remembered the serpent in his hands, its menacing fangs and cold eyes. "You mightn't like being toads at first," the Enchantress said reasonably. "It takes getting used to, but," she added in a reassuring tone, "once it's happened, I'm sure you wouldn't want it any other way." "Why are you doing this?" Taran cried with all the more anger at feeling himself powerless. He turned his head in fear and revulsion as the Enchantress gave him a kindly pat on the cheek. "Can't have people poking and prying," she said. "You understand that much, don't you? Make an exception for one, then it's two and three, and next thing you know, hundreds and hundreds trampling things and getting underfoot. Believe me, this is best for everybody." From around the side of the hill, at that moment, two more figures appeared. Both closely resembled the stout little woman, except the one wore a black cloak with the hood pulled up, nearly concealing her face, and at the throat of the other hung a necklace of milky white stones. The Enchantress ran to them and called out happily, "Orwen! Orgok! Hurry! We're going to make toads!" Taran gasped. He shot a quick glance at the bard and Eilonwy. "Did you hear those names?" he whispered hurriedly. "We found them." The bard's face was filled with alarm. "Much good it may do us," he said. "By the time they're through, I don't think we're going to care about the cauldron or anything else. I've never danced in a dew circle," he continued under his breath. "In different circumstances I might enjoy it, but not now," he added with a shudder. "I've never met a person," whispered Eilonwy, while Gurgi snuffled in fright, "who could talk about such dreadful things and smile at the same time. It's like ants walking up and down your back." "We must try to take them unawares," Taran said. "I don't know what they can do to all of us at once. I don't even know if there's anything we can do to them, but we must take the chance. One or two of us may survive." I suppose that's all we can do, agreed the bard. He swallowed with difficulty and gave Taryn a worried look. If it should turn out that if it should be, yes, well, what I mean is, should anything happen to me, I beg you, do pay attention to where you tread. Meantime, the three enchantresses had returned to the cottage. Oh, Audu, the one with the necklace was saying, why must it always be toads? Can't you think of anything else? But they're so neat, replied Audu, compact and convenient. What's wrong with toads? Asked the hooded one. That's the trouble with you, Orwin, always trying to make things complicated. I only suggested something else, Orgok, answered the enchantress called Orwin, for the sake of variety. I love toads, murmured Orgok, smacking her lips. Even in the shadow of the hood, Taryn could see the features of the enchantress moving and twitching in what he feared was impatience. Look at them standing there, Audu said. Poor little goslings, all wet and muddy. I've been talking to them, and I think they finally realise what's best for them. Why, those are the ones we saw galloping across the marsh, said Orwin, toying with her beads. It was so clever of you, she added, smiling at Taryn, to have the huntsman swallowed up in the bog. Really, quite well done. Disgusting creatures, huntsman, muttered Orgok. Nasty, hairy, vicious things. They turn my stomach. They stick to their work, ventured the bard. I'll say that much for them. We had a whole flock of huntsmen here the other day, said Audu. They were poking and prying around just as you were. Now you understand why I said we couldn't make exceptions. We didn't make exceptions of them, did we, Audu? Said Orwin. Though it wasn't toads, if you remember. I remember very distinctly, my dear, replied the first enchantress. But you were Audu then, and when you're being Audu, you can do as you please, but I'm Audu today, and what I say is... That's not fair, interrupted Orgok. You always want to be Audu. I've had to be Orgok 3 times in a row, while you've only been Orgok once. It's not our fault, my sweet, said Audu, if we don't like being Orgok. It isn't comfortable, you know. We have such horrible indigestion. If you'd only pay more attention to what you take for your meals. Taryn had been trying to follow this conversation of the enchantresses, but found himself more confused than ever. Now he had no clear idea which was really Audu, Orwen, and Orgok, or whether they were all three the same. However, their remarks about the huntsmen gave him hope for the first time. If the huntsmen of Anuvan are your enemies, Taryn said, then we have common cause. We too have fought against them. Enemies, friends, it all comes down to the same in the end, muttered Orgok. Do make haste, Audu, and take them off to the shed. It's been a terribly long morning. You are a greedy creature, said Audu, with a tolerant smile at the hooded crone. There's only another reason why neither of us wants to be Orgok, if we can possibly help it. Perhaps if you learn to control yourself better. Now listen to what these dear mice have to tell us. It should be interesting. They say such charming things. Audu turned to Taryn. Now, my duckling, she said pleasantly, how did it come about that you're on such bad terms with the huntsman? Taryn hesitated, fearful of revealing Gwydion's plan. They attacked us, he began. Of course they did, my poor goslings, said Audu with sympathy. They're always attacking everybody. That's one of the many advantages of being toads. You needn't worry about such things any more. It will be all romps in the forest and lovely wet mornings. The huntsman won't vex you any more. True, you shall have to keep an eye out for herons, kingfishers, and serpents, but apart from that, you won't have a care in the world. But who is us? Interrupted Orwen. She turned to Audu. Aren't you going to find out their names? Yes, by all means, murmured Orgok, with a lip-smacking sound. I love names. Once again, Taryn hesitated. This, he said, gesturing toward Eilonwy, is Indeg, and Prince Glessic. Orwen giggled and gave Audu an affectionate nudge. Listen to them, she said. They're delightful when they lie. If they won't give their right names, said Orgok, then simply take them. Taryn stopped short. Audu was studying him closely. With sudden discouragement, he realized his efforts were useless. This is Eilonwy, daughter of Engerad, he said, and Fluda Flam. A bard of the harp, Fluda added. And this is Gurgi, Taran continued. So, that's a Gurgi, said Orwin with great interest. It seems to me I've heard of them, but I never knew what they were. It's not a Gurgi, retorted Eilonwy. It's Gurgi, and there's only one. Yes, yes, Gurgi put in, venturing to step from behind Taran. And he is bold and clever. He will not let brave companions become toads with humpings and jumpings. Orgok looked curiously at him. What do you do with a Gurgi? She asked. Do you sit on it or eat it? I should think, Ordu suggested, whatever you did, you would have to clean it first. And you, my duck, she said to Taran, who are you? Taran straightened and threw back his head. I am Taran, he said, assistant pigkeeper of Caer Dalban. Dalban, cried Ordu. You poor lost chicken, why didn't you say so in the first place? Tell me, how is dear little Dalban?
Hey, you want to buy something? You can check the description for my books and audiobooks. Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more content.